Okay. Morning's Torah portion is Parsha Vayechi, the final portion in Chumash Bereshis, the book of Genesis, and it has no commandments in it. It's found on page 268 in the handy art scroll. It's chapter 47, verse 28 through chapter 50, verse 26. So the first thing, as an introduction to the parsha, it's very important to realize that there are two Torahs. Which is surprising for many people to hear me say that. It's two Torahs because there's the written Torah and the oral Torah. The written Torah is the part of Moshe and the books of the prophets and the writings. And the oral Torah is the Mishnah and the Talmud. And the way we should look at it is like the written Torah is like an outline, and the oral Torah fills in the blanks. And this is very important to realize, and I'll show it to you visually. Something that we're going to touch on a little bit later on are the blessings of Yaakov. I want to show you a small amount of text, a lot of commentary. Small amount of text, and a lot of commentary. Because a lot of the things in the Torah, on our own, we wouldn't be able to understand what they mean. And I can give you many examples. For example, one of the examples is pre-Eitz Hadar. Literal translates a fruit of the tree, pre-Eitz Hadar, that is beautiful. What does that mean? So we know from the oral Torah that means an esrog, a citron. But Tesh might think, I like bananas, so can I shake a lulav and banana? And the answer is no, because the oral tradition learns out how we know, in fact, that it means a citron and not something else. All right, and there are many, many other examples of Jewish law. How about the most famous mistake, an eye for an eye? Biblically, it looks like an eye for an eye means you knock out somebody else's eye, your eye gets knocked out, but that's not what it means. The oral Torah teaches us it means financial compensation. So there are many examples of this where the oral Torah clarifies the text. And Parshas Vayechi is one of those portions that really, on their own, it's very hard to understand what it means, besides a deeper understanding. But I'm talking about even just a simple understanding of what it means. So that's important introduction number one to this week's Torah portion. The Gemara is oral. It just, because the nation was being persecuted and dispersed, the rabbis decided we have to write it down because otherwise it's going to be forgotten. That's a good question. So originally it was just written just as the Mishnah, and then it was expanded to the Gemara and other things as well, and commentaries. So now I'm going to show you the art scroll printer mimics how, in a certain way, how the Torah text is written in a Torah scroll. And what I don't mean is, I don't mean that they have a scribe write it. No, I don't mean that at all. Here, let me show you what I mean here. It doesn't make a difference. I'm just going to show you the page, and you see that there is a blank space, All right. So in the Torah scroll, that's how it's going to be written there. In a chumash, instead of having a blank space, it'll usually have a pei there. That means pasuach, that the line is open. Okay. And here's another example of that, where the text ends and then it's open and the next sentence begins the next line. Okay. But then you'll have other places that are susum, it's closed, this approximately 9 letters. So there's an ending and then there's a little bit of a space and then the text begins again. So the spaces are there so that Moshe and we, but Moshe, when he was getting the Torah, there was a time for him to contemplate what was done before. Now, usually there's a space between the end of one portion and the beginning of the next. It'll either be an open space where the text will end and then there'll be an open space in the beginning of the portion, next portion will begin on the next line, or it'll be a closed space, and again, there'll be a little space, and then the only portion that has no space between is last week's portion, Miketz, to this week's portion. I'm sorry, Vayigash, last week's portion, Vayigash, to this week's portion, Vayechi. There's only a space of 1 letter. That's it. So in the Torah scroll, you would not find any space. So the question is, why is there no space? You're not going to see it in the text. I meant to bring it, if you have a book downstairs to show, and I forgot to bring it up. I apologize, but the bottom line is that there's no space between last week's portion, Vayigash, with this week's portion, Vayechi. So Rashi teaches us 2 different reasons for it. Reason number 1 is that with Yaakov's death, which takes place in this week's portion, that was the beginning of the end, in the sense, the beginning of when things were going to start getting more difficult for the Jewish people in Egypt, the beginning of the exile. So that's one reason. And the other one is, so the eyes and hearts of the Jewish people were getting a little bit closed because of the pain of the upcoming exile. And the other one is that Yaakov wanted to reveal to his children when the end of days, when the Messiah would come, and God made that part, blocked it from him, that he shouldn't be able to reveal when the Messiah would come. So it was closed off. And so that's why that's unique to Parshas Vayechi. Like I said, there's no space at all in the Torah scroll between last week's portion, Vayigash, and this week's portion, Vayechi. Parsha begins, Vayechi Yaakov, and Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim for 17 years. Now the number 17 is the same numerical value as the word tov. Anyone know what tov means? Good, correct. So tov, tes is 9, vav is 6, and vez is 2. That's also 17, because they were 17 good years for Yaakov. He was joyous, he was happy, and the divine presence was with him. And he kept on doing the right thing, even though he was in Egypt, which was not his ideal place to be. He would rather be in the future land of Israel. But these were good years for him. And before his death, he calls, and again, this is very important to realize, that one of the conditions of having a deeper connection to God was being happy. And when he was happy, Yaakov had the deeper connection, and when he was happy, he had a deeper connection, and he that's a good thing for us to strive towards, to be happy, because that helps us have a deeper connection to God, and that's how the divine presence rested with him. As a matter of fact, when he was sad because of Yosef's, he thought Yosef had died. For 22 years, the divine presence didn't come to him. It's only after he found out that Yosef was alive that he was happier again, and then God came back to him. So Yaakov is he's sick, and he calls his son Yosef, and he tells him, he's not sick yet, but he says he knows that his days are numbered, and he calls Yosef, who he knows has the power to do something, and he wants him to promise him that he will not be buried in Egypt. He does not want to be buried in Egypt. Why doesn't Yaakov want to be buried in Egypt? So there's several answers. One of them is he didn't want to be made into a deity. He didn't want people to worship him. The Egyptians, when he came, the hunger stopped. And he did not want to be buried there because of that. Another thing was that he wanted to be buried in the land of Israel with his forefathers. So he asks Yosef to promise him that after his death, he won't be buried here. And he asks him for a very interesting term, which is a very important discussion we need to touch on. And he says, chesed ve'emes. You should do for me a loving kindness and truth. What does that mean, a loving kindness of truth? What does loving kindness and truth have to do with each other? So that's an important thing. So I'm going to tell you a simple understanding of what it is, and then we're going to discuss a more important aspect that's relevant, another aspect that's important as well. A loving kindness of truth is, if I do you a favor, maybe you'll do me a favor in return. When a person dies, that's called chesed shalemes, because that person can pay you back in this world. Right? So Yaakov is saying, I'm dead, I need you to bury me in the land of Canaan. And where does he want to be buried? Anyone have an idea? The Ma'aras HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah in the city of Hebron. He'd be buried there with Avram and Sarah and Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov will be buried there with Leah, one of his wives. So that's a chesed shalemes. It's a true chesed, because on this world, the person can't pay you back. I do a favor, maybe you'll do me a favor back. But after a person dies, that's a chesed shalemes. But there's a deeper aspect of it. And it's very easily seen. Stop the genocide in Gaza. People sound like they mean good things. They don't want people to be killed in Gaza. Sounds good. What's wrong with that? It's not a chesed shalemes. What they're doing is not truthful, because it doesn't deal with the issue. It doesn't deal with the missiles. It doesn't deal with the terror. It doesn't deal with October 7th. It's just focusing on one aspect of it. And you can have a whole here. And you can have, and there are many examples today where people are caught up on the wrong thing, and it sounds righteous, it sounds good, but it's really not, because it's not a chesed of truth. I'll give you another example, and this is more controversial. Person's in the hospital under pain, and they don't want to take the pain anymore. And they would say, pull the plug. They're in pain, pull the plug. You're doing them a favor, but it's not really a favor. It's really the worst thing you could do, because the person, first of all, could get better. And even if they can't get better, every moment of life is precious. So therefore, and again, these are longer discussions, and you have questions about this, I'm happy to talk about it. But I'm just saying that what is the right thing to do and the kindness to do is not so clear. And we need to have a moral compass to know what that is. The kid's crying, I want the candy now, I want the cookie now, please give me the candy now. What are you letting him cry for? Well, I give him the candy. He has to eat supper first. No, I want the candy first. But you're so mean. He's crying. Give him the candy. No, it's not a kindness for him if he doesn't eat his supper because he's busy eating the candies and cookies. So that's a simplistic example, but it's a good one, because once had, as some of you know, I teach pre 1 a.m. I teach 5-year-olds. It's my other job, and it was after a vacation, and the kid didn't want to go into class, and I said to the mother, I said, look, my advice would be for let me take him into class. He'll cry for a few minutes and he'll be fine. But if you want to wait with him outside, you're welcome to. But I'm telling you, whenever you're ready to let go, let me know. And she said, no, it'll just be a minute. I'm sure I can calm him down. Go right ahead. And, 5 minutes go, 10 minutes go by. I opened the door. I said, are you ready? No, he's coming right in. Okay, good. Okay. Finally, she had to go. So eventually she agreed for me to take him in and put him into class. And it took 5 minutes and he calmed down. And then another parent walked by and said, are you happy now? The kid's crying and the mother's crying in the car. Are you happy? I said, yeah, that's my thrill of the day. I made you cry. I made the mother cry, and now you're upset. So 3 people. You made my day. So what's wrong here? So I was telling the mother, and this lady didn't get it, but I was telling the mother that in the short term, it's the kid may be upset, but he'll get over it and get past it. Unless you're planning on keeping him home for his life, he does have to go to school eventually. So, so again, it's the same theme. The idea of knowing what is loving kindness is really something that takes clarity and focus and a Torah to teach us what is really right and what is really wrong. And it's not so simple because you have to know the circumstances behind it to really be able to make this. Was your friend planning on being for the class, or she's just coming to meet your mom?
Yes, she wanted. She was just coming to me.
Oh, okay, fine. In any event, so fine, it's fine. Sue, take it easy. So there's a deeper aspect. When Moshe Kabrin was 7 years old, and he was a great rabbi, but he was 7 at that time. He was a little boy, and there was severe famine in Lithuania, and people traveled from village to village in search of food, and many of them flocked to his mother's house, who cooked and baked for them, and there was a large number of poor people that came, and they had to make shifts. And one got impatient and insulted her, and she began to cry. She was doing her best for them. And the young son, the future rabbi of Kabrin, said, don't let the insults trouble you. Their insults mean that you're doing the mitzvah with sincerity, and you're not expecting any compliments. This is a very lofty level. And this way you're fulfilling God's commandment without any ulterior motives. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. Very, very lofty level. So it's doing the right thing not for validation from others, but really, and this is, again, we can do it for validation. It's better than not doing it at all. But this was and he was trying to encourage his mother not to be insulted by the people being upset at him. All right. So Yosef promises him that, yes, that will be the case, that he will not bury him in Egypt, and he swore to him, and it says that Yisrael, Yaakov, another name for Yaakov, bowed to the head of his bed. And what that was is because the divine presence is there, because when a person is sick, the divine presence is there to visit the person. So he was grateful to the Almighty. Why was he grateful? Because his bed was complete. What does that mean, his bed was complete? I don't mean that he had matching sheets and blankets. It means that he had all righteous offspring. And he was As he was getting sicker, so Yosef brings his two sons, Menashe and Ephraim, to Yaakov for a bracha, and for a blessing. And Yaakov speaks to his son Yosef, and he says, Hashem appeared to me in the land of Canaan. He said, I'll make you fruitful and numerous, and I'll make you a congregation of nations, and I'll give you this land for your offspring as an eternal possession. And then he says, the two sons that you have, Ephraim and Manasseh, will be like Reuven and Shimon. They're going to be considered like the tribes. They're going to be like one of the tribes. Now, this is interesting. Why? Because how is Manasseh and Ephraim related to Yaakov? Thank you. There's grandchildren. So he's saying that the two grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh, will be like his own sons, like Reuven and Shimon, which is very special. Any kids you have afterwards, that's a separate story. This is Yosef's sons. And this is amazing. And just as a side point, I don't know if you remember, we talked about when Leah was expecting her seventh child, she prayed that it not be a boy. Does anyone remember why?
It's her sister.
So Rachel could have at least two of the tribes, right? And that's where Dinah was born. So what happens? Hashem pays her back because Dinah's daughter is the one who Yosef married in Egypt. And now two more tribes are coming out from Leah because remember, Dinah was attacked in Shechem, and the daughter ended up in Egypt, in the house of Potiphar, and that's who Yosef marries. And now Yosef and Osnas have Menashe and Ephraim, and they are considered part of the tribes. So what ends up happening, just as an aside, is that there's always at least 12 tribes, because when we count Menashe and Ephraim, like when it comes to portions of the land in Israel, or like for traveling, when they're traveling with the Mishkan, Levi is not included. So you still have Reuven, Shimon, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Ephraim, Menashe, Binyamin. So you end up with 12 anyway. But this is interesting that he get it. Okay, so, but listen, there's something brought in here that doesn't seem to make sense. I'll read to you in English. But progeny born to you after, and now your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before my coming to you in Egypt shall be mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be like Reuben and Shimon. And now why is he picking Manasseh and Ephraim for this? Because even though they were never in the land of Israel, they kept the Torah and they kept their Judaism the way they were supposed to do it and weren't influenced by the society that they were in. Plus, they got along with each other, which is we're going to see shortly. But he continues, but progeny born to you after them shall be yours. They'll be included under the name of your brothers with regard to their inheritance. But as for me, when I came from Padan, this is page 271 if you're looking inside. When I came from Padan, Rachel died of me in the land of Canaan on the road, while there was still a stretch of land to go to Ephrath, and I buried her on the road to Ephrath, which is Beis Lechem. Like, why is he bringing in about Rachel dying? It seems to be so out of place. Again, page 271, verses 5, 6, and 7. He's talking about the progeny, and then he brings back Rachel died, and they buried her on the road by Beis Lechem. Like, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? And the answer is that Yaakov was saying something prophetic. He says, I want you to know, you may be wondering, let's say hello. You may be wondering, machine coming, whatever you want. You may be wondering why I didn't bury Rachel in the cave of Machpelah. Everybody else is buried there, right? And instead, where's Rachel buried? On the road. And you might think it was bad weather. No, it wasn't bad weather. No, it wasn't far from the road. I could have taken her, but I didn't. I buried her there. And that's where the tomb of Rachel is to this very day in Beis Lachem, in Bethlehem. And the reason why is because Hashem told me with prophetic vision that I should bury her there, because many years later, when the first temple is destroyed and the Jewish people are traveling on the way to Babylon, they're going to stop at the tomb of Rachel. And they're going to pray to God that they come back to the land. And Rachel is going to intercede. Her soul will intercede with God and pray that the Jews be allowed to return to the land of Israel. And by the way, she's not the only one who intercedes. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov also will intercede, and God refuses them. And the only one he listens to is to Rachel, because Rachel was willing to give up the helpful hints. If you remember, Rachel was the one who Yaakov was supposed to marry, but Lavan tricked and put Leah instead. Ever remember the story, what I'm talking about? And when Leah was going to be revealed, because Yaakov had told Rachel certain laws of marriage, so Rachel revealed them to his sister. And it ended up being that he didn't realize that it was Leah, and he married Leah before he married Rachel, and she didn't even know whether Rachel would eventually. She didn't know whether Rachel would eventually be able to marry him. In the end, she did, but she gave up the secrets and gave up her destiny for Leah. So because Rachel did such an amazing thing, Hashem said, "I will listen to you." And even though the Jews weren't faithful to me as they should have been, don't cry anymore, Rachel, for the Jewish people. I will bring them back to the land of Israel. God promised that they will be in exile, but the exile will end and they will go back. And eventually they did and built a second temple. Okay? So this is why this is here, because Yaakov is saying, here I'm asking you to take me all the way from Egypt to Canaan, and I didn't do the same for your mother. She died on the way, and I buried her there. But that wasn't my choice. That was Hashem told me that I should bury her there, that the Jewish people should have a place to pray on the way when they're being chased into exile going into Babylon. Is this clear? Good? Yeah? I hope everybody's with me. All right. Yes.
How are we supposed to pray differently when we're davening by the side of the like a make sure versus just
It's a very good question. So we should daven to Hashem. It's an auspicious place to daven to Hashem. But you can ask that righteous person that they intercede on your behalf as well, to intercede to Hashem, to daven in their merit, that Hashem should let whatever prayer you're praying for should take place as well. So people get a little nervous about that because it's the concept of intermediary, but it's not you're not davening for the intermediary. You're requesting that the intermediary, you're davening to Hashem, and you also request the intermediary daven also for you. Yeah, you could do the same. Daven to Hashem, but also daven, and daven in that case also daven for their merit, that you're saying Tehillim, Psalms, let's say, you're giving charity in their merit. It's still there, correct. There's still a connection to that place. Yes. All right. So we actually call, it's interesting. It's so interesting, and how the power of prayer. What was Leah's prayer all of her life?
Not to marry Esau.
Not to marry Esau. And after she married Yaakov, what was her prayer? Did Yaakov have a good relationship with her? What was Rachel's prayer all of her life? That she have children. So what ends up happening is Yaakov is buried next to Leah. Leah gets her wish in a sense that eternally Yaakov and Leah are next to each other. She has her husband. And Rachel is called, we call her Mama Rachel, Mother Rachel. And people daven there for her. She davens for the Jewish people, her children. So, in a sense, the fruition of their prayers continued after their death as well. Leah continues to be next to her husband Yaakov, and Rachel continues to be Mama Rachel, the mother Rachel, as she cries for the Jewish people, and people go there. I find the cave of Rachel to be a very moving experience. I recommend that when you go to Israel, go to Beis Lechem to go there. It's a very, I find it to be very, very. It's like the Kotel, the Western Wall is big. It's a plaza. It's and Cave of Rachel is more intimate. And again, that's my feeling. So he calls Menashe and Ephraim and brings them closer to bless them. But Yaakov is blind at this stage, and he puts Menashe, the older one, on his left, should be on Yaakov's right, and Ephraim, the younger one, on his left, which should be on Yaakov's right. So Yaakov's left. So that he blesses the older one, Menashe, with the right hand, and the younger one, Ephraim, with the left hand. But Yaakov switches, and he puts his right hand on Ephraim and his left hand on Menashe. And Yosef thinks he made a mistake, and Yaakov says, "It's okay, it's okay." They're both going to have righteous offspring, but Ephraim is going to have Yehoshua. Joshua will come from him, was a great person, and therefore Ephraim, even though he's the younger one, will get the right blessing. And he says a beautiful prayer that we actually say in the Shema at night. And he says, found on page 272, 273, verse Tezayin, verse 16. He says, Hamalach Hago LOC. He blesses Yosef, and he says, and he says, may the angel who redeems me from all evil bless the lads, and may my name be declared upon them, and the names of the forefathers Abraham and Yitzchak, and may they proliferate and abundantly like fish within the land. So he says Hamalach Hago, which is, there's a nice song with that goes with that, and we say that in the Shema at night. And he also says that on verse 20, so he blessed them that saying, by you shall Israel blessing say, may God make you like Ephraim and Menashe, and he put Ephraim before Menashe. And Friday nights, fathers bless their sons to be like Ephraim and Menashe, and their daughters to be like Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. So Sarah, Rivka, and Rachel, Leah, that's pretty obvious. The matriarchs, we want our daughters to be like the matriarchs, beautiful. But why do we say that the sons should be like Ephraim and Menashe? Why don't we say Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? And it's what I told you before. Number one, that they got along well, and number two, that they were raised in Egypt. In spite of being in a totally non-Jewish environment, they maintained their Judaism and could survive. And that's a key element here about the ability to pass on Judaism. I had a discussion with somebody a few weeks ago about this idea, and you can have a lot of nice Jewish people of all different types that are religious, not religious. But if you want a recipe to pass on Judaism, that has to be studying Torah and living a Torah lifestyle. That's a recipe that has the potential to at least do that. Being a nice secular Jew And you can be a very nice person, a wonderful person, and we cherish you regardless of that. But that's not, it doesn't pass on. And the statistics are very clear about that. So if we want to pass it on, we have to learn Torah and do mitzvahs and create an environment of Judaism in spite of wherever we may be, and that will have a much better chance of having it survive. So now Yaakov calls all of his sons and he gives them individual blessings. And as a matter of fact, you can look at our beautiful Aron HaKodesh, our beautiful Ark in the Shul, and you'll see many of these. And there are many pictures that represent, this is from the cover of the Medrash Says, a very nice book in English, but the pictures depict the different blessings that he gave. And one of them was, Yaakov said, it talked about, this was prophecy. It says, and the teeth of Yehuda will be white, and that's referring to the abundance of milk that would be growing in the part of Israel that will have a lot of cows and there'll be a lot of milk there. But our sages learned something very beautiful out of this, and says the following statement, that a smile is better than milk. Imagine if every day you come to the office and someone gives you milk for your coffee. You'd be very grateful. But our sages tell us that a smile is even greater than milk. You can give everybody a smile. That's a beautiful thing. A rabbi once said something very beautiful. He said that even if I'm not feeling it, I should smile anyway. Why? Because my face is a public property. Person who's walking around sad, and maybe rightfully so, they're sad about some real stuff. Your face is public domain. Smile, because it impacts people, and that's an important idea. So that's Yehuda. Yisachar and Zevulun. Yisachar, it talks about him being like a donkey, and Zevulun goes to the seashores. And what that means is that Yisachar carries the load of Torah, and Zevulun is a merchant, and they had a beautiful deal, a Yisachar and Zevulun deal. Yisachar would be the provider of sharing half of his Torah merit with Zevulun, and Zevulun would share half of his financial wealth with Yisachar. And again, like many of these things, when we look at it, we don't understand what the words mean. One of the things is done is like a snake. And that doesn't sound like such a great blessing, but what it's referring to is this is what it says. Done will be a serpent on the highway, a viper by the path, and bites the horse's heels so the rider falls backwards. What does that mean? What does done have to do with the snake? And the answer is that's referring to Shimshon. Shimshon Hagibor, the powerful protector of the Jewish people who protected the Jews from the Philistines. When they eventually get him in a weakened state, they put him chained to two huge pillars holding up the building that had the festivities where the Plishtim were finally able, they got him, they blinded him, and they got him and they captured him. So what does he do? He's like the snake. The snake wants to get the rider, he bites the horse, and the rider falls off. So Shimshon pulled the two poles of the building and was able to destroy the Philistines. He died as well, but he was able to destroy the Philistines, the Plishtim that way. So again, there's a lot of prophetic things going on in here in the blessings, and for each of the tribes. And
Rabbi,
yes,
I had a question. Had you heard something about there was an Irish saint, Saint Patrick, that marched all the serpents, the snakes of the town, into the river, and I had heard something that his ancestors might have been Jewish.
You got to call the Irish Learning Exchange for that. I have no idea.
But I'm asking if you heard that anything
No,
like
I've
that.
never heard of that before.
Okay, thank you. I'm just asking.
Sure. No, I never heard the story. Okay. I don't know. And by the way, just going back to the smile issue, our sages tell us that if you honor a parent with simple food, but with a smile, that's even greater than giving them expensive delicacies without a smile. Because you're serving with a smile, that's very good. Finally, after all of this, all the blessings to both individually and collectively to all of the tribes. He tells them about being buried where he wants to be buried, and that's where Leah is, and he wants to be buried there as well. So listen to verse 33, what it says in the pasuk. It says, when Yaakov finished his instructing his sons, he drew his feet onto the bed, he expired and was gathered to his people. What does that mean? Gathered to his people. So that idea here is that death is not just the end of everything, because it's the end of the physical body, but the soul lives on. So this way, the soul is already connected and gathered to his people in heaven. It wasn't buried yet, so he can't be buried in the cemetery. He's going to be buried later on. So this is a text proof of the idea of a soul, because again, it says that he expired and he's gathered to his people because the soul went up. And Yosef is sad, obviously, and he tells Pharaoh that he promised his father to go, and they all go up to Canaan, and many other people join as well. Other nations see what's going on here, and the tribes are walking in the same formation as they will later on, years later, when their tribes will be, the Mishkan will be in the center, the tabernacle will be in the center, the mini temple, and the Jewish people will be around it, and they're walking this way as well. And they go up to the land of Canaan, to the Marsa Machpelah, and all of a sudden, they're blocked by Esav. Esav says, hey, there's one more spot, that's for me. And they say to him, hey, you made a deal with our father that when Yitzchak died, you had a choice. You could have the spot of the burial and the land of Israel, or the money, and you choose the money. And Esav says, who said that? I don't remember. He says, there's paperwork. We have paperwork. You have it on you? No, we don't have it on you. It's in Egypt. Okay, well, Naphtali, you want to run down to Egypt to get it? But meanwhile, Hushim ben Dan, Hushim, the son of Dan, who was deaf and didn't know what was going on, but he knew this guy, Esav, is blocking the way to get into the cave of Machpelah for his righteous grandfather. And Hushim went and chopped off Esav's head. And Esav's head rolled into the cave of Machpelah, and they were able to continue the funeral. Which, by the way, is an interesting concept, because Esav potentially could have been righteous had he elevated the physical, but he didn't. So his head ended up, but his body, which was not holy at all, ended up not in the cave of Machpelah. And Yosef tells the Shvatim, he tells the tribes, first of all, they're a little nervous. They're still wondering if he's going to take revenge on them, and he tells them, no, don't worry, I'm not instead of God. You thought to do bad for me, but God made it for good, and don't worry about it. And Yosef tells them, I'm going to die, but I'm letting you know God will remember the Jewish people. And he will take you out of this land. And the only thing I want you to promise me is that when God remembers us, take my bones out. Don't leave me here. Let me leave with the Jewish people. And the parsha ends with the death of Yosef, and ultimately, as we'll continue next week, with the death of all of the tribes. But Yosef promises them, God will take us out. Pokod Yifkod, we will be able to go out, but just promise me that you'll take my bones when I go. All right, and then we say, if you look on the page 288, we stand up in the synagogue and we say the words Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek, which means may be strong, and may we be strengthened to finish other Torah works again and again. So that we say whenever we finish a Torah portion, that's what a Torah book, that's what we say. So I want you to say another few minutes. There's a very beautiful song written by a friend of mine, Avi Rottenberg, sung by Yaakov Shweki, is a beautiful voice, that is about Mother Rachel. And I want to play it for you. I'm going to give you the words with the translations. I want to tell you something, a background information about it. There was a great Rosh Yeshiva, a dean of the yeshiva. So again, Rachel is the one who cried for the Jewish people. So God told her, "Don't cry anymore. I promise you that that your children will return to the land." So there was a great dean of a yeshiva, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz of the Mir Yeshiva, originally from Eastern Europe, miraculously survived the Holocaust, which is its own phenomenal story. It's a whole book on it. Through Shanghai and made it to Israel. And he would go to the tomb of Rachel and he would pray and say, Rachel, cry for your children. Cry for your children. Let them be out of exile. And his students once had the strength to ask him and say, someone running for election there, getting a bunch of waving back and forth.
So,
I guess so. In any event, someone asked him, God told Rachel not to cry. Why are you telling Rachel to cry for the Jewish people again? Very powerful question. And he answered very beautifully. He said, a father can tell a child, don't cry. But a child can tell a mother, please cry for me. So that is a beautiful story here. And about the words. Sorry?
Thank you.
Those of you at home on Zoom, if you'd like a copy, you can call the office, and we'll gladly email it to you.
Question.
Yes.
Does these two marches this week and last week, do they always fall on the secular year, or is that just a coincidence this year?
It's around. It's always going to be close. It'll be close. It doesn't. Bear with me for a moment.
With the rising sun on her wedding day, she raised her eyes to the heavens, and she thanked Hashem for the man of truth, with whom she will build the nation. But with nightfall came destiny betrayed, the veil concealed another. Yet a sister's shame, not her shattered dreams, took hold of her heart and her senses. Mama, Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? If you raise your sweet voice now, it's then the day will come. Mama, Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? Bezichutech v'shalom b'nei. In a roadside grave, she was laid to rest in solitude forever. But her voice gave hope to the broken hearts of her daughters and sons bound for exile. When her plaintive cry gave divine consent, a challenge to her maker, can the mercy of mere flesh and blood run deeper than yours, our creator? Mama, Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? If you raise your sweet voice now, is then the day will go. Mama, Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? Bizichutech v'shalom b'nei. Now your voice is still as you heed the call of Miliko Elech Bibechi. It's our Father's will, He who made us all. We ask of you to define, yet to frighten child, dumb from pain and grief, remains forlorn and uncertain. clinging to the faith that it can be heard. As it cries out to its mother. Tremendo che sei portato, children, praise your sweet voice, time is there. To shed your children, in the blue day, you shine for me, love. Is the good day, the shine for me.
Beautiful, moves me all the time. Very, very, very powerful. I've heard it tens of hundreds of times. It just moves me all the time. Okay, any questions, thoughts, comments?
Thank you, Rabbi. It's a very beautiful shir.
Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Take care. You regards. Good to see you.
Yes. Yeah, bye.
Take care. Malka, Elisheva, all the best. Take care, Malka.
Thank you.